The road narrowed as the car climbed higher into the mountains, winding like a serpent through dense forest. Trees hunched low over the path, their gnarled branches clawing at the grey sky. It was supposed to be a shortcut, an unmarked track that Miles had found on a hiker's blog, a scenic detour he'd promised. It's beautiful, right? Miles grinned from the driver's seat, drumming his fingers on the wheel. Cora, squinting out the fog-frosted window, muttered, "It looks like the start of every horror movie ever." In the back seat, Jess laughed, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck. "Come on, Cora, where's your sense of adventure?" "Buried somewhere back on the main road," she muttered. They had left the main highway hours ago, detouring into the wilderness on what was supposed to be a half-hour jaunt. But the road had twisted deeper and deeper into the forest. And now, it felt like they'd entered a different world. Their cell service had vanished over an hour ago and not a single car had passed them since. "Okay," Miles said, slowing down. "This is weird." The road forked unexpectedly, a faded wooden sign standing at the intersection. It was crooked, half-rotted, and the lettering had nearly worn away, but one word could still be read. Windmere. None of them had heard of it. Jess leaned forward, frowning. "That's not on the map, is it?" "Nope," Miles said, pulling over. He tapped at his GPS, but the screen spun uselessly. "Dead zone," Cora crossed her arms. "Maybe we should turn back." But Jess was already unbuckling her seatbelt. "Let's check it out. Worst case, we ask for directions or gas. But I'm pretty sure we're running low." Reluctantly, Cora followed them as they turned left at the fork. The road became more uneven, riddled with potholes and blanketed in leaves. The forest thinned after a mile or so, and suddenly, without warning, the village appeared. Windmere. It looked like something from a postcard. Picturesque cottages with flower boxes under the windows, cobbled streets winding between mossy stone walls, and lanterns flickering softly as dusk crept in. A small stream curved through the center, crossed by an old arched bridge. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys. Everything looked still. Too still. "Wow," Jess whispered. "It's like a fairy tale." "It's like a stage set," Cora said, unease prickling at her skin. They parked near the village square, where a tall clock tower stood silent at the center. The hands of the clock were frozen at 5:47. A door creaked open across the square. A man stepped out, middle-aged, in suspenders, and a woolen coat with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He waved as he approached. "Evening, travelers," he said. His voice was warm, but something in his gaze felt off. "Not often we get visitors up this way." Jess smiled back. "Hi, sorry to drop in unannounced. We were just passing through and saw the sign." He nodded, as though this were the most natural thing in the world. "Windmere's a quiet place, but you're welcome to stay the night. Rooms at the inn, just up that lane there. Miss Laurie'll take care of you." Miles glanced at the others. "Actually, that'd be great. Just for the night." The man nodded again, turning back the way he came. "This way." They followed him down a narrow street lined with lanterns. Cora noticed that all the windows were shuttered, though soft. Candlelight glowed behind the glass. As they walked, they passed a woman sweeping her stoop, her movements slow and rhythmic. She didn't look up. Further down, a little girl stood beside a well, staring at them with a blank expression. When Jess waved, the girl ducked out of sight. "Friendly place," Cora muttered. The inn was a charming timber-framed house covered in ivy. A hand-painted sign above the door read, "The Bell and Lantern." Inside, it smelled of lavender and old wood. A woman with silver hair stood behind the counter, wearing a shawl and a faded smile. "Evening," she said softly. You'll be wanting rooms." "Yes, thank you," Miles said, "just for one night." She handed them keys without asking for payment. "Dinner's in an hour, you'll hear the bell." As they climbed the narrow stairs to their rooms, Cora paused to whisper, "Is it just me, or does everyone here seem off?" Jess shrugged. Small town vibes, but Cora couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her room, though clean and warm, felt staged, like it had been set up for a guest that never arrived. There were no personal touches, no dust, no signs of life. At dinner, the dining room was filled with villagers, but none of them spoke above a whisper. They ate in near silence, occasionally glancing at the newcomers with curious, unreadable eyes. The food was rich and oddly sweet, stew, bread, spiced cider, but left an aftertaste that lingered unpleasantly. Cora barely touched hers. Afterward, they stepped out into the square. Fog had rolled in thick and low, and the village seemed even smaller than before. "Weirdest place I've ever been," Miles muttered. "I say we leave first thing until the morning," Cora said. "Agreed," Jess said. "Get back on the main road and forget this place." They turned in early. Cora lay awake long after the others had gone to sleep, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind whispered like a voice just out of hearing. And then, faintly, the sound of footsteps in the hall. Slow, measured, stopping outside her door. She held her breath, the doorknob turned, and then silence the next morning. They packed quickly and headed to the car. The fog was thicker now, curling around the tires like fingers. Miles turned the key. Nothing. The engine wheezed, coughed, and died. He tried again. Still nothing. "Battery's dead?" he asked, checking. The dashboard. "It was fine yesterday," Cora said. They tried the GPS again. "Still spinning." "I'll ask the innkeeper," Miles said, heading back. He didn't return for 10 minutes. Jess finally followed and came back pale. "She's gone," she whispered. "The inn is locked." All around them, the village seemed to shift subtly. Doors that had once been open were now shut. Windows, once glowing, were dark. It was as if Windmere had swallowed them whole. The silence that descended was heavy, unnatural. It settled in their bones like fog in the hollows of the earth. Miles stared down the empty street. "She was just here." Jess wrapped her coat tighter. "Are you sure it was the same inn? I mean, maybe it was a different building?" "No," he said. "Same sign, same door, but it's locked. It's like she vanished." They returned to the square. A man in a broad-brimmed hat was sweeping near the fountain. Miles rushed over. "Excuse me? Hey, our car won't start. Is there someone here who can help? A mechanic?" The man looked up slowly. His expression was blank. "You weren't at breakfast," he said, as though that were all that mattered. Jess stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're trying to leave. Can you help us?" He didn't reply. He went back to sweeping. Cora backed away. "Okay, this place is wrong. Really wrong." They wandered the village, trying doors. All were locked. The bakery, the apothecary, the chapel, with stained glass windows showing unfamiliar saints, all shut tight, though movement flickered behind curtains. "Watching, waiting, I don't get it," Miles muttered. "How do people live like this?" Jessie stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" A low, steady chime echoed faintly across the village, the bell from the tower. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the third toll, every door creaked open at once. People stepped out into the streets, all at the same moment, moving with eerie synchronization. They didn't acknowledge the travelers. Instead, they walked toward the square, forming a quiet congregation in front of the tower. An old man with a curved cane ascended the steps. His voice was strong despite his age. "It is the 3rd day of the month. The new moon rises tonight. We give thanks for the offerings, and we endure as we have endured." A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. Miles leaned in close to the others. "What the hell is this? A cult?" "Feels like a ritual," Jess whispered. Cora grabbed his sleeve. "Let's just go now." They turned to leave the square and froze. The road out of the village was gone. Where it had once been, there was only forest. Dense, gnarled, ancient trees. No sign of the path they had come in on. No tire tracks. No sign that a car had ever passed this way. Jess took a shaky step forward. That was the road. I swear it was right there. "It was there," Miles said. "This doesn't make sense." Cora turned back toward the villagers. "They did this. Somehow they did this." The villagers began dispersing, as if on cue. No one spoke to the outsiders. No one offered comfort or clarity. They were alone again. That night, they slept in one room together at the inn, the only door they could get open. The fire burned low, and no one said much. Sleep came in fits and starts. At some point in the night, Cora woke to the sound of whispering. She sat up slowly, heart pounding. The room was dark, save for the glow of embers in the hearth. The others slept, breathing steady. The whispering came from the hallway. She crept to the door and pressed her ear against it. They've seen too much. The road is gone. The offering must be made. She stepped back, chest tightening. A shadow passed by the gap beneath the door. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, they tried again to leave, on foot this time, pushing through the dense forest where the road had once been. They walked for hours, hoping to find some opening, some sign of civilization. There was none. Eventually the trees thinned. They stepped out onto the same village square. The inn stood across from them as if they had never left. Jess sank to her knees. No, this isn't possible." Cora felt the panic clawing at her throat. "It's a loop. We're trapped." Miles punched a stone wall in frustration. "What is this place?" That afternoon, they split up, each searching for a way out. Some clue, some secret passage, anything. Cora entered the chapel, the only door that hadn't been locked. The interior was dusty and dim. Candles burned low on an altar covered in a black velvet cloth. Carvings lined the walls, not crosses or angels, but symbols she didn't recognize. Circles inside circles, eyes with no pupils, trees growing upside down. At the back of the chapel was a mural, faded and flaking but detailed. It showed a village ringed by mountains surrounded by darkness. In the center, a fire burned, and figures danced around it. Some had human faces. Others did not. She backed away, chilled. Jess found an underground root cellar behind the apothecary. Inside, among sacks of dried herbs, she discovered a book bound in cracked leather. The pages were filled with entries written in looping script. They come when the veil is thin. The price must be paid, one for each new moon or the village withers. The visitors arrived. They know we must act before they try again. The most recent entry had that day's date. Jess ran. Miles climbed the tower, hoping to get a view of the surrounding land. But from the top, all he saw was endless forest, no towns, no roads, no movement. Just trees that stretched on forever. And something else at the edge of the woods, a shape, watching. He squinted, heart hammering. It wasn't a person. Too tall, too thin. Its head was wrong, elongated, tilted, like it was listening. And then it was gone. By sunset, they regrouped at the inn. Jess showed them the journal. Cora described the chapel. Miles told them about the thing in the woods. "This village," Jess said slowly, "makes deals, sacrifices." Cora paled. "To what?" Miles didn't answer. That night, the bell rang again. Once, twice, 3 times. A knock came at the inn's door. Jess moved to the window and peeked out. A procession was forming, villagers in dark cloaks, candles in hand. They stood in the square, unmoving. "They're waiting for something," she whispered. "No," Cora said. "They're waiting for us." The procession stood perfectly still outside the inn. 30 villagers, cloaked in dark garments, holding candles that barely flickered despite the wind. Their faces were calm, blank, strangely serene. "They're not trying to hide it anymore," Cora said, backing away from the window. "They want us to know." Jess stood frozen. "What are we supposed to do? Go out there?" "They don't look violent," Miles said, though he didn't sound convinced. "They've had plenty of chances to hurt us if they wanted to." "Maybe they were waiting for tonight," Cora snapped. The knock came again, 3 slow raps. Miles stepped forward, took a breath, and opened the door. The innkeeper stood there, Miss Loria, her shawl pulled tight, a candle in her hand. "You're invited," she said softly, "to witness the ritual of ash and root. It is tradition. It is peace." Jess looked at the others. "Do we even have a choice?" "No," Miss Loria said, her expression still unreadable. "Not anymore," Gigged, turned and walked back toward the square. Miles exhaled slowly. "We'll go. We watch. Then we figure out what the hell is going on and find a way to stop it." The 3 of them stepped outside. The villagers parted for them without a word, letting them into the center of the square. The fire pit had been lit, flames crackling, unnaturally high and white hot. At the top of the stone steps stood the elder they'd seen before, the one who had spoken during the bell ringing. His name, they learned, was Aldrich. He raised his arms, voice carrying unnaturally well over the hush. "Tonight, as with every third moon, we stand before the hollow and offer gratitude. Long ago, the village made a pact. We would endure, untouched, by time or plague or famine, in exchange for obedience. We are watched and we are weighed. We must give or be taken." A few villagers began to hum, a low harmonic sound that vibrated through the stones underfoot. Miles leaned toward Cora. "This is a cult." "It's more than that," she whispered. "It's ancient." Aldrich turned to them. 3 have come. A gift delivered by fate. The hollow demands one. Only one. Gasps rippled through the villagers, excited, reverent. Cora stepped back. "What the hell does that mean?" Aldrich smiled faintly. "Only one must remain. One to join the village. The others may go." "You think we're just going to pick someone?" Jess said, her voice trembling with fury. "Like a sick game, the hollow chooses," he said calmly, "as it always has." The humming grew louder. The flames roared. A great wind swept through the square, extinguishing every candle in a breath. Suddenly a darkness fell, not nightfall, but something else, a pressure, a presence. The villagers dropped to their knees. Whispers filled the air, thousands of them from nowhere and everywhere at once. The fire turned black. Out of it stepped a figure, tall, hooded, shifting, as though made of smoke and bone and something older than either. Its head was crowned with antlers, twisted and jagged.
No face, just a void. Cora clutched Jess's hand. "What is that?" The hollow did not speak aloud, but the words echoed inside their minds, burrowing deep. "3 have entered. 1 will remain, 1 will serve, 1 will know. Choose, or I will." And
just like that, it was gone. The fire returned to orange. The wind died. The villagers stood. Aldrich bowed his head. "You have until dawn." The villagers dispersed. Jess stared into the embers. "We can't choose. We won't choose." Miles looked pale. "If we don't? It chooses for us. What does that mean? Does it kill us? All of us?" Cora shook her head. There has to be another way. They returned to the inn. This time,
the door shut itself behind them. They argued through the night. "I'll stay," Miles said at one point. "I got us into this. It should be me." "No!" Jess shouted. "And this isn't about guilt."
"It's a trick. They want us to turn on each other." Cora sat apart, staring into the fire. "What if there's another way? The book you found, what did it say exactly?" Jess opened it again. She read aloud. "1 remains. The hollow must
know them. They carry the memory. They become part of the root. If the choice is refused, the hollow takes as it pleases. No one leaves." Cora looked up. "What does part of the root mean?" Miles answered, voice quiet. "I think
it means whoever stays becomes like them. Not dead, but not really living. Stuck here. Forever." Silence stretched between them. The bell rang once, twice. "Dawn's coming," Jess whispered. Then the fire went out, not just the hearth. All light in the inn vanished at once. The air turned cold, thick with shadow. The hollow had returned. In the darkness, a voice like falling ash echoed. "You would not choose." "So I will." Cora felt something pull at her chest, a terrible, invisible force dragging her forward. She screamed, grabbing the edge of the hearth. "No!" Jess lunged forward, grabbing her hand. "Don't take her!" Miles threw a chair, shouting into the void. "Take me! Instead, take me!" But the force was focused, intent. Cora was pulled across the floor, toward the door. And then, suddenly it stopped. A shape stood in the way. Miss Loria. "No," she said to the darkness. "She is not yours. I invoke the old right. I give myself." The darkness paused. "You are already mine. But my roots are deep," she said, stepping forward, hair loose now, eyes glowing faintly. "She is new. I am old. Let her go." A sound like breaking glass echoed around them. And then light returned. The hollow was gone. Miss Loria collapsed. Cora rushed to her side. The old woman smiled faintly. "Run, while you can. The cycle is broken, for now." Her breath left her body, slow and soft like wind through leaves. Outside, the sun was rising. They didn't speak as they ran through the village. The roads were still narrow, the trees still strange. But something had shifted. The path was back. They found the car, dead but intact. Miles hotwired it in seconds, hands shaking. They drove in silence, speeding through the forest as the sun rose higher. An hour later, they reached the highway, civilization. Phone signals returned. The air felt normal again. Time realigned. They didn't speak about what happened, not to each other, not to anyone. They told people they got lost. spent the night in an abandoned cabin. No one questioned them, but at night, sometimes Cora dreamed of the fire, of the hollow, and she remembered Miss Lauria's last words. The cycle is broken, for now. 6 months later, they didn't stay in touch, not really. A few awkward texts, occasional check-ins, but after everything, the silence between them felt safer. Cora returned to her apartment in Portland, but she never fully came back. Her friends said she seemed distant, always distracted. She told them she was fine. She wasn't. Some nights, she still saw the hollow in her dreams. A tall figure of smoke and bone, standing beneath a forest of blackened trees, whispering words she couldn't understand. And then one morning, she woke to find soil on her bedroom floor, damp, black, root-filled, as if something had grown through her in the night. She stared at it, heart racing, and swept it away before anyone could see. She told herself it meant nothing. Jess had moved in with her boyfriend in Oakland. She tried to get back to normal, work, dinner parties, long walks with the dog. But every time she passed a mirror, she caught glimpses of something behind her. A flash of shadow, a shape just out of sight. Sometimes she'd stare too long at trees, noticing how some of them leaned toward her. She burned the journal she'd taken from the cellar, watched the leather curl and blacken in the backyard pit. Still, she dreamt of roots coiling around her feet, of mouths opening in tree bark, whispering her name. Miles left the country, backpacking across Europe, pretending the village never happened, but the guilt stayed with him. He'd dragged them there. He'd laughed when Cora wanted to turn around. He'd thought it was a joke, an adventure. Now, when he passed stone towers or quiet chapels, his pulse quickened. He never stayed in one place too long. He kept moving, as if something were following, and deep down he feared it was. It was Cora, who got the letter. No return address, no postmark, just her name, written in looping script on an envelope made from old parchment. Inside, a note. The hollow does not forget. One must return. She tried to convince herself it was a prank, until the second letter arrived, this time with a sprig of dried blackroot tucked inside, and then the third with a photograph of the village, taken at night. The square lit by fire, and in the center, 3 shadowed figures, her, Jess, Miles, taken from above. She flew to Oakland and showed Jess the photos. Jess went pale. "Where did you get this?" "I told you, it just showed up. It's been 6 months, but I don't think it's over." Jess bit her lip. "You think it wants us to go back?" Cora didn't reply. She didn't have to. They found Miles in Marseille. He looked thinner, gaunt, like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw them, he didn't ask why they'd come. He just said, "I've been dreaming about it again, every night." They booked flights the same day. The drive back to the forest was almost exactly how they remembered it. Grey skies, winding roads, the faint smell of pine and rain. But the GPS failed 10 miles out, the car radio crackled into static, and the air grew heavy. The village was still there. Exactly the same, not aged, not weathered, as if it had only been a day. And this time, no one greeted them. No candles, no cloaks, no Miss Lauria. Just silence. They walked the square in slow steps. The inn door opened as they approached. Inside, everything was untouched. 3 places set at the table. 3 beds turned down. A fire already lit. Cora felt the pull again, that strange, gentle tug at her chest. Not violent this time, inviting. Jess picked up a folded piece of paper on the mantel. The cycle pauses but never ends. You left. Now one must return in full. This time there is no choice. Miles swallowed. What does in full mean? I think it means one of us has to stay, Jess whispered. Forever. That night, they sat in the square beside the cold fire pit, watching the stars. No villagers appeared, no bells rang. Cora broke the silence. I think it wants a keeper, a guardian. Someone to carry its memory. You sound like you're considering it, Jess said. Maybe I am. No. Jess turned to her, eyes fierce. You don't owe it anything. None of us do. She saved me, Cora said. Miss Loria, she gave herself for me. Maybe that means something. Miles shook his head. We can find another way. There isn't another way, she said quietly. At midnight, the wind shifted. The fire pit burst into sudden flame, white and silent. The hollow stepped through. One must remain, or all return. The ground trembled. Around the square, shapes began to form. Dozens of figures rising from the earth, cloaked in shadow. Villagers. Only now they looked less human, faces stretched, limbs warped, soulless eyes watching. They were rooted here. Extensions of the hollow's will. You left incomplete. The root remembers. The soil calls. Cora stood. Jess grabbed her arm. Don't! Miles stood too.
Take me instead. The hollow's head tilted. Only one. The chosen must walk willingly. Cora stepped forward. The hollow parted. Behind it, the chapel stood open. Inside, a single candle flickered. She turned to the others. I need you to remember. Me, she said.
Just in case I forget myself. Jess wept silently. Miles nodded once, jaw clenched. Cora walked into the chapel. The doors closed behind her. Outside, the fire went out. The villagers, if that's what they were, sank back into the soil. The hollow vanished, and dawn broke, gentle and golden. The village faded. Miles and Jess found themselves standing beside the highway, as if no time had passed. The forest behind them looked normal. No sign of the village, not even a path. Their car sat parked by the road, intact. Inside it, a photograph. Cora stood in front of the chapel, smiling. Her eyes were glowing faintly. She had roots at her feet. 1 year later, Jess still saw her sometimes, in dreams, in reflections, in the trees outside her window. Cora. Smiling, but not quite. There was always something behind her now, dark, ancient, and still. Miles refused to talk about it. He moved again, changed his number, deleted all his social media. He'd once tried to burn the photograph. It wouldn't catch fire. Instead, the edges curled inward, and a voice whispered. She chose. Jess had started researching folk legends, obscure religions, forgotten villages. She kept a notebook now, filled it with drawings, symbols, and strange root patterns that kept showing up in her dreams. The hollow wasn't just some local god or forest spirit. It was older. A consciousness tied to earth and decay, to memory and sacrifice. It didn't punish out of malice. It preserved, it balanced, it remembered. And the village. It wasn't the only one. Across the world, small pockets of land existed, unmapped and misremembered. Places where people vanished, where time paused. Villages that were kept. Then one night, Jess received an email. Subject line, you should see her. No message. Just a location pinned to a forest trail in Oregon. Miles met her there. He didn't ask how she knew. Just followed. hiked for 2 hours through dense woods, overgrown paths. The air grew thick again, like it had near the hollow. The trees leaned closer, the roots twisted beneath their boots. Then they reached a clearing, and there it was, the village. Exactly the same, only this time no one greeted them. No villagers, no firelight, no bells, just the chapel door hanging slightly open. Inside it was warm. A single candle burned on the altar, and Cora stood waiting. She looked almost the same, face familiar, smile gentle, but her eyes were deeper, darker. Her hair shimmered with threads of silver, and around her ankles small roots wove through. "The floorboards like veins. I knew you'd come," she said softly. Jess stared, heart pounding. "Are you okay?" Cora nodded. "I remember everything. The hollow is memory. It doesn't just keep the village, it keeps stories, people, truths no one else wants." Miles stepped forward. "And you're its prisoner?" "No," she said. "Its caretaker." She walked toward them, slowly, and for the first time, they noticed the way the ground pulsed slightly beneath her feet, like she was part of it now. "I don't feel pain. I don't age. I see the world through the trees. I hear forgotten names whispered by the wind. I hold what would otherwise be lost." Jess looked around. "Where are the others?" "Gone," Cora said. "Return to the soil. Their time ended. Mine just began." Miles frowned. "Why bring us back?" Cora looked between them. "Because the hollow is changing. Something
New is coming, something hungry. The roots feel it. The soil is uneasy. Jess stepped closer.
"What do you need us to do?" Cora hesitated. "Remember me. Tell the world. Write it down. Draw it. Pass it on. If no one remembers the story, it dies. And the hollow dies with it. And if it dies," Miles asked, "then the balance breaks, and things far worse than the hollow will be free to take its place." That night, they stayed in the village. One final night. Cora walked the paths with them, speaking softly, pointing out trees that once were people, telling stories the hollow had kept hidden. A queen who gave up her crown to save her people. A lost child who sang a village back to life. A hunter who disappeared chasing a white elk, only to return a century later, unchanged. The village was a library of the forgotten. Cora was its librarian. At dawn, they hugged her goodbye. Jess wept. Miles couldn't look her in the eye. "I'm not gone," Cora said. "I'm rooted." As they left, the trees shifted behind them, the path unspooled, and the village disappeared. 5 years later, the book was published in limited print, The Vanishing Village, a true account of memory, root, and sacrifice, by Jess Monroe and Miles Ashford. Most people thought it was fiction, a clever allegory about grief and isolation, a metaphor for trauma. They didn't care. The story was out there now, and sometimes they received letters from people who'd seen a village that wasn't there the day before, who'd heard bells deep in forests with no trails, who'd dreamed of a girl with roots growing from her hands, smiling with eyes full of stars. In a place no one could map, a candle burned. Cora sat in the chapel, leafing through a book that hadn't been written yet. The wind carried voices, new stories, new memories. The hollow pulsed beneath her, alive, listening, balanced for now. Autumn, somewhere in Maine. The boy walked into the forest at dusk. He wasn't supposed to be there. His mother had told him stories of things that lived beneath the roots, of voices in the trees. But he didn't believe them. Not really. Not until he saw the candlelight. It flickered between branches, soft and golden. He followed. The trees shifted around him, subtly at first, leaning back to let him pass. The ground felt strange beneath his feet, spongy and warm, like something alive was breathing beneath the soil. Then the clearing opened, and there it was. A village, old but somehow new, timeless. Stone cottages, ivy-covered walls, a chapel at its center, its doors wide open. The boy stepped forward, entranced. Inside the chapel, a woman sat reading by candlelight. She didn't look up when he entered. "Are you lost?" she asked softly. He nodded. She smiled. "That's how everyone finds this place." He glanced around. "What is it?" "A memory," she said, closing the book. "A story being told. You're part of it now." He furrowed his brow. "Is it real?" Her smile deepened, kind and strange. "What's real is what stays with you, what roots into your bones. This place remembers those who need to be remembered." "Do you?" he asked. "Need to be remembered?" She looked past him, out the door, as if watching the wind carry the answer away. "I used to," she said. Then she stood, walked toward him, and gently pressed something into his hand, a seed, small, black, warm. "Plant it when the time is right," she whispered, "and listen carefully to what grows." The boy blinked. She was gone. The chapel empty. The village faded around him like mist, and he was standing alone in the woods, twilight settling over the trees. He looked at the seed in his palm, then tucked it into his pocket, and walked home without looking back. Somewhere, the hollow sighed. It wasn't words, it wasn't sound, just a feeling in the roots, a stirring of soil, a memory of someone who had once chosen to stay, and the quiet knowing that when the time came again, someone else would. Remember, because stories like villages only vanish if we let them.